Okay. I want to thank all of you here for showing up and for joining us. I'm doing tonight's program here because when I hear about politicians getting arrested, when I hear about politicians, Black politicians in particular, getting arrested, I keep asking myself, how is it that you can keep seeing them be arrested for LGBT? You can see them being arrested for non-citizens. You can see them get arrested for pretty much anything and everything except Black people. I have yet to see that. When they were alive, Elijah Cummings and John Lewis had no problem being arrested. They had no problem barricading, locking hands with everybody else for every other issue. If you listen to me on my YouTube program, The Black Channel, you know I've covered that for years and years. How Elijah Cummings was stumbling and bumbling through his sentences and words, but was screaming and yelling when it came to the children of illegal aliens from Mexico. When it comes to Black folk getting gunned down by the police, you would be lucky if he issued a press release. You would be damn lucky if that occurred. And now you have several Black politicians there. I put this up earlier. Ayanna Pressley, Barbara Lee, and some others. And now they've decided they're going to go out there and barricade a street in DC. And I think AOC was out there with them. And all for abortion. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, them, Cori Bush, some of the others, and I'm sitting there saying, I'll be damned, with Black folk, we get, if we're lucky, we'll get a tweet, and it's going to be something very vague and innocuous of that. If we're lucky, we'll get a tweet. But usually you don't even get that. But I'll be damned if we're going to see them risk life and limb for us. I'll be damned if you're going to see that. And that's the kind of thing that I'm taking a look at. I'm taking a look at the fact that as Black people here, our politicians don't do that kind of stuff. We don't get to see them getting arrested. We don't get to see them putting themselves in harm's way. So I'm just asking a very simple question here. What the hell good are they? What is the purpose? What is the point of voting when this is what you see? I'm asking you a question. What is the point of voting for your Black politicians here when very clearly all the things that we talk about, all the type of gestures that they could show for us, we don't see that. Now, they've proven that they are capable of it, but just not where we're concerned. What do you do when you have a political class that has been recruited by a political party that has nothing but animosity towards you? The very politicians that they've chosen to represent you have contempt for you. Those are your representatives. Those are your representatives, people who have contempt for you. When you see somebody risking their lives for something, they're showing you what they really care about. Most of them ain't even young enough anymore to even have children, but they're laying down there in the streets for abortion. But where Black people are concerned, where Black women gunned down by police are concerned, we don't get Black politicians willing to get arrested. We don't get that. You know why? Because if that were the standard, they would have to be getting out there every frickin' week. If that were the standard, and they'd have to be sitting outside of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's offices. That's the reason why. And I consider it to be outrageously disgusting to see something like that. But now, now that you've passed by the John Lewis, Elijah Cummings era, your next so-called group, Cori Bush and Ayanna Pressley, they are showing their utter contempt for Black people. Remember Ayanna Pressley putting up all those tweets about infrastructure is racial justice. Good schools are racial justice. Climate change, stopping climate change is racial justice. And it all sounds very familiar. Familiar to the thoughtin' twerking Rhode Island State Senator Tiara Mack, who was twerking for basically the same issues. Literally. And her biggest contribution to Black people is an IOU. An IOU for what? Well, she said IOU to twerk, literally, if you all saw a post about this, to twerk for reparations. Now, this is when you've let the situation get too damn far along. When you have a political class that is boldly this contemptuous of not just the people they represent, but the very people they come from, and then you let them stay in office, the situation's gotten too damn far along. Now, this started with the civil rights generation, simply tolerating anything and everything that rolled through the door. Although even back then, they spoke up a little bit more for Black people's issues. You didn't have other things to divert to as easily back then. Today, you don't have representation anymore. We don't have representation anymore. What we have are selected puppets and Trojan horses. You have your selected puppets and your designated Trojan horse, but what you don't have is representation. This is why we speaking up for ourselves is such a dangerous thing. Now, I rolled around all over New Orleans. I was looking for Bowling Ball Martin, and he waits till he is safely back in DC, barricaded in his studios, to start talking about me again. Not a word while he was on the road, not a word when I could have gotten in touch with him, not a word when I was actually in the same city, hell, in the same building, I believe, at some point. Not a word then. But once he is safely surrounded by various flavors of cream-filled donuts and barricaded behind a door with as much juicy fruit, Snicker bars, and grape soda as he can handle, then he starts mentioning me again. I have to say I'm offended by that. I'm personally offended. But this is what we have, what you used to have representing you. This is what you have which claim to represent us. And if you want to know why it is that politicians feel they can do those kind of things, it's because up until now, nobody has pointed out, nobody has talked about it. One of the issues here I want to highlight is the power of what we do. And I don't know if there's anybody here with their hands up or whatever. So Eve, if they are, you can go ahead and bring them forward. I'll bring them on in just a moment here. But I want to highlight the power of what we can do. You see, if you leave it up to the politicians and their so-called pollsters and strategists, they are always, always, always going to tell you that the problem is that Black issues are not popular. That's what they're going to tell you. They are going to tell you that Black issues are not popular. They're going to tell you that Black people's issues don't sell every time we show up. Now, they're going to tell you that there's enough of us that we decide which way elections go. The LGBT constituency couldn't move an election 1 percentage point or another, but Black people decided whether or not Joe Biden got into the White House. And immediately after telling us how powerful a force we are, thank you so much for getting us in the White House. Can't do nothing for you. Won't do nothing for you. Sit down and shut up. And you need to help us take care of everybody else. That's literally what Joe Biden said. You need to help us take care of the Latinos. He didn't tell the Latinos, y'all need to help us take care of black folk. Literally sat there and told and said that. I'd like to tell you that we've been abandoned by our political class, but we have not been abandoned by our political class. We've been targeted by our political class. We'd be better off if we were just abandoned by them, but we're not just abandoned by them. We're outright targeted by them. And if you listen to the politicians and their pollsters and whatnot, they will tell you that our issues are irrelevant, that our issues don't matter, that voters are not motivated by that there's not enough of them motivated by it. Well, if there's not enough, if our issues are so minor and so small and nobody's motivated, then by definition, there's no reason for us to vote. You can't sit up here and say that we're such a huge, powerful voting bloc that we determine elections, and then we say, okay, here's what we need done for us. Oh, sorry, you're not important enough. We were important enough to get you in office. We were important enough to get you elected. We were important enough to get you to the White House. So that's where it comes from us. We've been deceived into thinking that if we have an issue, that we should just go from year to year, and that the most you can do is wait for the politicians, but that's not true. That's not true at all. What they're checking to see is whether or not we've glommed on to another agenda, whether or not we've glommed on to other options. You see, what we're doing right now, this kind of talking, this kind of murmuring, and it's not even murmuring anymore. Now, this type of nationwide dialogue, this is exactly the thing that scares them. This is exactly the thing that bothers them. It bothers them because you have a conversation, a discussion that they don't control, that's not being hosted by them, that's not being censored by CNN or ABC. You don't have the ability to tell us what we're speaking about here. So when you see the puppet politicians and the designated Trojan horses doing these kind of things, we have a different conversation about it. It's not the old folks sitting here painting over everything and glossing over everything and condoning it. That's not what we're doing. A different agenda sounds like this. A different agenda sounds like this.
I was wondering, TBA, what if we left them in jail? Like, if nobody came to their rescue and they just had to sit there, do you think that they would just let them out?
Well, yeah, I mean that's basically what happens. They get, they when you do political stunts like that, you just get arrested for what disorderly conduct. They hold you for like 12 hours or whatever. In their case, though, they might just get held for an hour and a half, and then you're released on your own recognizance, basically. So, very common political stunt for them. Even under the worst of circumstances, they're not going to get treated like us. So, they're not going to get the Rodney King treatment, no matter what they do out there. So, at best, they're going to get the Ed Buck treatment at best. So, at worst, that's what they're going to get. So, don't have to worry about that. But this really concerned me when I see this. This really concerned me when I see that kind of thing. Your black politicians get arrested for everything except black people. And I wanted to speak on this by itself. I wanted to speak on this on its own. I want to do this on its own because when I see that kind of thing, when I see a political class that can be motivated, when I see a political class that can get up and can do something, when they actually choose to put it all on the line, these are the kind of things they choose it for. I shouldn't say these are the kind of things they choose to do it for. But there's deathly silence when black folks show up. When we show up, it's deathly silence. Let me go ahead and get Afro Elite. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
B1 TBA. Thank you for letting me speak. I wanted to give my opinion on the topic. I would say not only do our black political class not do any sacrifices, not commit any sacrifices advocating for us as they do for every other group and every other cause, we can barely get them to even speak on our issues. Like last month or so, we had a white supremacist go to a grocery store and gun down 10 black people, and you had the Congressional Black Caucus not even want to address these issues. We have to at them and damn near beg them, and I'm not saying that because we need them, but we have to constantly keep adding them in order for them to even address things that are happening to us because it's deemed as controversial, it's unpopular, or they're working behind the scenes. Now, when it comes to any other group and any other cause, whether it's abortion, immigration, nothing is too controversial for them to publicly go out in the streets and address it. Nothing is behind the scenes. We're always being told that we don't understand how politics work and they're advocating for us behind the scenes. We never hear that excuse when it comes to Asians with the Asian hate crimes, when it comes to the white LGBT, when it comes to immigration, abortion, all of these other issues they advocate loud and proud for. But when it comes to black people, it's like a taboo subject that we need to have this conversation behind closed doors, and they don't want to acknowledge when black people literally get gunned down in the street. So I would say not only do they not get arrested, they don't even want to acknowledge our existence damn near, except when it's time for us to vote. Now, when it's time for us to vote, then it's very important they're advocating for us because voting for us is the most important thing. That's the only time we ever get acknowledged is around the time it's for us to vote. And then after it's time for us to vote, then all of a sudden a long laundry list of issues pop up that take priority over black issues. So that's all I had to say, and I appreciate you giving me the chance to speak. B1.
Black first, brother. Thank you very much for checking in with us here. You know, Jimbo Jangles is out there. Jimbo Jangles is out there. And next thing you know, you don't hear about black people anymore. Hell, you didn't hear about black people while he was running for office, truthfully speaking. And that's what we end up with are a bunch of individuals here. They get in the office and then they have spokespeople, they have pollsters, they have surrogates, they have spokesmen who sit up here and claim up and down that they're speaking on our behalf. That don't worry, they're holding this up. And then we ask them specifically what in the world they're doing, can't find it. So as far as I'm concerned, until I see them doing this kind of stuff here and getting put in handcuffs and making this much noise on our behalf, hell no, throw them all out. No, I cannot endorse you voting for any of them in any case. Now, because there's the real thing is, look, these people do not want us to vote. Listen to me. Get this through your head. They do not want us to vote. They want us to vote Democrat. If we tell them that we're going to get together and vote for a different party, it's not as when you say we're not going to vote. Stop telling black folk they shouldn't vote. Don't tell them they shouldn't vote now. Tell them they should vote. They should vote now. Tell them they should vote. Okay, fine. Vote for anyone other than Democrats. Wait now. Don't do that now. Can't do that now. Wait a minute now. You want to get Trump in there. So just understand how the game is. They are the only acceptable outcome, the only acceptable option in their eyes is whether we vote is to get us to vote Democrat. There is no third option. There is no other option. You got to vote Democrat or else. So I fully endorse you here. Anything other than Democrat, knock yourselves out. Anything other than that. Because now you have mortally offended us. We are mortally offended by what you've done. Let me get AZU. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Second try, AZU. Unmute yourself. Don't just float through trying to get your name shouted out. That'll get you blocked.
Ben, are you there? Can you hear us?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can now. What's on your mind?
Oh, yes, it's exactly what you said it is. They want you to vote Democrat because, you know, all last election I was called a Trump supporter. Even though I said nothing to endorse Donald Trump, I was just questioning a bunch of stuff. And then you sound like a Republican. You sound like a Trump supporter. I think what it is, a lot of black people lack like political consciousness. Like Malcolm X said, we not developing a political maturity, and I think we're coming around to that point right now. It's just that a lot of us we we still stuck on stupid to a certain extent. Thanks for having me. That's all I pretty much had to say.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here. He's working at the auto plant apparently. Let me get Stop White Terrorists. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sorry, I didn't even know that I had volunteered to come up, but since I'm here, I will speak to our Black politicians. No, I do not think that they have done anything in the last 50 years for us. It seems like they're more interested in upholding the white agenda and keeping their proximity to white supremacy and keeping money in their pockets. So it's quite disheartening because we're dying out here in these streets. We can't trust the police. We have it's just a mess. It's just a mess. And so I'm hoping that we can band together. We can come together not only to get reparations, but and honestly, reparations would take care of all of this because we will have economic power. We can force them to do some things that they are not doing. So I'm gonna say thank you, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you very much for joining us here. We appreciate having you with us here. And don't let these people sit up here and tell you that somehow we have to sit up here and reach some critical mass. We reached that critical mass back in 1870. We don't have to convince anybody about how important we are, how important the issue is. Everything becomes a damn hot potato, and that's just what it is every time. And what they're looking for is to make sure that we accept that. It is a shameful legacy to have to sit up here and support individuals who make it their goal in life to ignore your interests. It's shameful to have that political class. It's shameful to have that as what you advocate and support for. And to go to what Azu was saying here earlier, as Black people, what we're going to have to also face up to is the whole reason why this entire descendants of American slaves and foundationals discussion got started is because you have individuals who, while they might be Black, they do not identify as Black, and they are not opposed or fighting white supremacy. That's the whole reason for it. And so for those of us who do, we started taking a look at why it is that's happening. And we noticed some specific, distinct differences. Well, you also notice that for your Black Democrat supporters. I'm going to talk about them. There's something to be said for your so-called Black Republicans as well. I want to talk about the Black Democrats, since that's 90% of the vote. And the issue there is that you have to understand a lot of them have distinct differences from us. They have very distinct, very specific differences from us. You start noticing similarities. I'm going to get in trouble tonight. We're going to get in some good twabba. You start noticing distinct differences. You start noticing that they're older. So what that tells you is they're part of the defeated generation, set in their ways, chasing integration, i.e. interracial sexual access. They are comfortable being the labor class for white society. They do not desire to lead. They desire to be led. They reinforce every negative stereotype about Black folk there is. You notice that a lot of them lean on the church. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a religious belief per se, but there is something wrong with having a religious belief that subjugates you. These are individuals who chase organizations and chase recognition among their small group of people. So here's where you get with, your Boule and Divine Nine and Talented Tenth and the First Negro. and the Simone Sanders of the world and whatnot. That's a treadmill that they never get tired of running on. They have no problem running on that treadmill to the end of time. And to them, that is more important than any collective Black issue, any collective Black desire, any collective Black ambition. Their age is more important than Black people as a group. Their particular religious affectation is more important than Black people as a group. Their sorority or fraternity eclipses any importance of Black people as a group. So you take that seriously when you see them all getting together and skinning and grinning like that. That's not a joke. They're letting you know, hey, we were handpicked by the system. Of course you were handpicked by them. Just like they handpicked the immigrants who come over here and they are boiling over with anti-FBA hatred and sentiment. That's what you have sitting at MSNBC. That's what you have on Roland Martin's program. That's what you have at these newspapers. That's what you have at these cable TV networks. That's what you have in those places. If you want to know how it is, they all get together. Kamala Harris, that's how they end up there. Ayanna Pressley, that's how they end up there. So we need to recognize that there are actually very specific, distinct things that separate them from us. Individuals who are still just so doggedly supporting Joe Biden and the Democrats, no matter what's happening. When they sit up here and tell you can't vote for Trump because he's going to hurt us. Okay, well, Biden's hurting us too. Yeah, but that's good hurt. Okay, you're voting for something else is what you're doing. You're not voting for Black people. You're voting for some other reason. Let me go ahead and get Naturally Tura. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Greetings, Jason, Just Eve, B1 family. I just basically had a question because this is like the never ending hamster wheel. What would it take or what would we need to do to start our own political party?
Well, let me be very clear. I'm less concerned about political parties per se and far more concerned about a political agenda. Keep in mind, you have Asians who are Democrats and Asians who are Republican, and their political affiliation doesn't harm Asian interests. Why is that? You have Jews who are Democrats and Jews who are Republicans, and yet those political delineations and distinctions don't harm Jewish interests. It doesn't affect or impede their ability to promote Jewish people's interests. Why is that? You have Latinos who are Democrat and Republican, and yet their political party affiliation doesn't impede their ability to promote Latino interests. LGBTs, we can go down the list. So for every other group, their political affiliation doesn't impede their ability to promote the interests of their group. So there's got to be a reason for that. There must be something they know or something they're doing that Black people are not doing. Oh, wait a minute. They're on code. I mentioned this years and years ago when Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the head of the DNC, I believe at the time, and Eric Cantor was one of the high-ranking Republicans. These are both two Jewish people. And when it came to political issues per se, oh, they were hammer and tong at each other. But when it came to political issues, except when it comes to Jewish people. Now, when it came to that, oh, them, Carl Levin, Joe Lieberman, across the board. Didn't matter what political party they were in. When it came to Jewish people and Jewish people's interests, they didn't sit up here and mumble mouth, mince words, stumble, stutter. They didn't do anything like that. They were 10 toes down. They made it very clear where they stood, whether it was Democrat or Republican. It doesn't matter who you are when it comes to Jewish people's interests. Notice I did not say the state of Israel. I did not say when it comes to the interests of the state of Israel. When it comes to Jewish people's interests, period, they are all on one accord. They are all on the same page. As Black people, that's what we need. So you see, when you have a situation here where folks can be split off because they've got some deviating interests, there's the problem. Remember, all of our solutions are from the grassroots up. It's not from the sky down. Our solutions are from the grassroots up. As more of us are expressing what the problem is, let me be very clear with you. They are shook, they are worried, because they understand that this constitutes an increasing level of instability for them. Is this ever escalating level of instability that they're staring down the barrel of all the time? Because they know right now we're talking, and it's not that we're just talking. They know that the drum beat has been getting deafeningly loud. What they're really trying to figure out is how long we can ignore it and how long you can mislead for it.
Well, that's why you're the Black authority, because it makes so much sense. So thank you for taking my question.
Thank you very much for joining us here. And like I say, definitely your political party affiliation, there's nothing wrong with that. Have that what it is. If you want to form your own, that will work also as well. Here's the issue. What good is it to have your own political party if you don't have the will to stand by an agenda? What's the point of having that if you don't have the will to do so? And if you do have the will to do so, well, that doesn't require a political party to do that. Williams, go ahead and unmute yourself.
B1, and good afternoon to the family. How's everybody doing? So, Dr. Claude Anderson talked about this in his book, Black Labor, White Wealth, when it comes to voting as a illusionary power for us. He talked about back in 1964, we had 103 elected officials, but we still had 33% Black prisoners. And then comes up to 1992, we had 8,000 elected officials and 43% Black prisoners. So he's been talking about this for decades now, and it's all about codification and getting on code and practicing powernomics and getting ourselves together. And that's what it's basically been about.
Well, certainly, like I say, what you just expressed right there, that's called an agenda. That right there alone, that's an agenda. I submit to you all that integration is not an agenda. I mean, well, I guess you could call it that, but it's certainly not one that empowers you. That's what the real problem that we've had is that we were told, or at least Black folk pursued goals that didn't actually empower them. Everybody else does. That is why the conversations that the politicians have when they go meet other people are markedly different. Show me where Jimbo Jangles can hold the fish fry for the Asian community. Show me where he could do that. Show me any Black politician who can hold the fish fry for the LGBT or whatever. When Tiara Mack shows up at the LGBT thing, she basically shows up literally dressed up like slave play, literally. Everybody else is out there wearing clothes, and she's dressed like a stripper at Magic City. And if you saw it in my program, you saw that as well. That's what they're doing. That's how they come to us. That's how they approach us. You can't find any similar equivalent for everybody else. But that's because they have an agenda and they've stood by it. As Black people, having an agenda is new. We've had some flare-ups and they knew what the cause was, but then the whole thing next was to pivot and see if you can take it somewhere else. Ever since Trayvon Martin, we've been on a decade-long now crusade to change the dynamic. So what they've been embarked on is a crusade here, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, to flood the zone with as many non-Black people as possible. And if they do have to be Black, there'll be individuals who are hostile to our interests, and then see if they can every time you turn around, see if you can change the discussion. They want to find out how suicidal it really is. That was why when people asked me in 2016, Jason, do you think the Democrats are going to learn from the defeat of Hillary Clinton? I said, hell no. No, they're not good. They're just going to tweak the formula and come back and try it again. 2018, they damn sure did. Jason, did they learn from their defeat in 2018? Nope. Learn not a damn thing. Jason, did they learn from barely squeaking by in 2020? Remember, I told you they've learned absolutely nothing from this. To them, it's just, okay, well, that didn't hurt. Let's see if we can go ahead and keep going. And now you're getting to 2022. And in the national polls, the only thing more unpopular than Joe Biden is COVID-5. He's currently being outpolled by COVID 1, 2, 3, and 4. If the election were held tomorrow, COVID would win. So would COVID 2, 3, and 4. Biden would lose. And that should tell you something. Thank you very much for checking in with us here, Mike. As Black people, that should tell you something there. See, we're always told that there's a bunch of hoops we have to jump through, and there's a bunch of qualifiers we have to have. The importance of doing what we're doing here, and I'm going to say this directly, the importance of doing what we're doing here is that we're doing what we're doing what the Black church used to do. The Black church used to speak and advocate and be the place of gathering for Black people's interests. That's what the Black church used to do. It no longer does. The Black church no longer acts and speaks in our interests. It doesn't advocate for us anymore. They're waiting for some politicians to show up and tell them what to do. But they don't advocate in our interests. That's a big difference. So for us, when you talk about the Black media and even something like this right here, we're advocating in our own interests. And we're doing what the Black church used to do, but no longer does. You see, if your pastor were doing his job, if you're going to be talking about racial justice and whatnot, they would be talking about the Black politicians and how the hell is it you can come up in my church asking to get elected, and I saw you in handcuffs for LGBT, abortion, illegals, everything except Black people here. Oh, no. I got to tell the truth and shame the devil, which probably means shaming you. That's what the Black church used to do. The Black church used to abide by our agenda. Now they've just been completely bought off and co-opted. They don't have an agenda. And I remember when I read for you all Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. I told you all about that. Go read the entire text of Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. If you read the whole thing, don't just read one or two sentences from it. When you read the whole thing, he was warning and admonishing the clergy, the other members of the civil rights movement, that if the Black politicians and particularly the Black clergy did not change the way they were doing things, then the next generation of Black folk, that was mine, the next generation coming up, they were going to be opposed to the Black church. They would have absolutely no faith in the Black church whatsoever. That's in Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. Go read it for yourself. He was warning them that if we continue like this, being ineffective, being puppets, not speaking on Black people's interests and standing by it, the next generation is going to have no faith in the Black church whatsoever, and the Black church is going to lose its primacy. And that is exactly what has occurred. What you have in the Black church today is an ever-aging demographic, but what you don't have are a bunch. It used to be routine for the young Black folk to come to the Black church and become members of it. It no longer is. And that's because young people have a specific set of issues that are not being addressed, and they know the church used to address it, but they don't. So we're doing what the Black church used to do. Let me go ahead and get Lioness crowned. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Jason. This is Linus Crowned from DC. Thank you for taking my question. I have a political strategy question. I recently came across an article that was published in the Boston Globe in 2018, and it's called When Gays Wanted to Liberate Children. And in this article, they refer to the 1972 10-point platform that Boston's gay men's liberation groups presented to the Democratic National Convention. Okay, I'm not going to even reference all 10 of those points, but they actually presented this to the 1972 Democratic Convention. Yesterday, I saw an article from the Chicago Sun-Times that the Democrats in 2024 are looking at Chicago for their convention this cycle, and that the Republicans are poised to pick Milwaukee. Along the lines of, you expressing our importance of having an agenda and voting, irrespective of party, do you think it will be a good strategy for us to present our platform and our agenda to both conventions in 2024? Thank you for taking my question.
Well, absolutely. That'd be perfectly fine to do that. Absolutely. Here's the killing thing about it. They're already aware of what our agenda is. When that doesn't mean that we don't keep pushing it. Let's be very clear. That's not that we are very well aware. We don't. That's not a justification for us to no longer push it. But to be clear, they know what it is. When you saw Bernie Sanders sit up there in front of Wolf Blitzer and Wolf Blitzer asked him about reparations, no, 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 no. So this is supposed to be the radical senator from Vermont, and oh, he's a socialist, and this you finally found something that the socialists couldn't support. As soon as you interjected black people, all of a sudden you found something that even the so-called socialists wouldn't support. Amazing. When you ask all these other folk here, they know what the agenda is. Kamala Harris, do something just for black people. Oh, hell no, I'm Asian. So it's not a situation where they don't know. To be clear, it isn't one where they don't know. What we're facing here, and I know it's frustrating. Trust me. I've had my moments. I know it is very frustrating because their goal is to make you believe that you are shouting into the wilderness. Their goal is to break our political will by making it seem like nobody's listening. That is why after Marcel Dixon ran, they were so damn shook when he was running. As soon as the election was over, they were like, yeah, see, that doesn't matter. See, that doesn't matter. What you all were talking about, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Well, why are you fighting so hard to say it doesn't matter? If something is self-evident, the thing should speak for itself, as the Latin says. And yet that's not what you did. They did more talking about him after the election than they did before. What does that tell you? This came from the top. You better get out there and tell everybody that the only thing that matters is voting Democrat. Anything else is ineffective. Anything else is useless. Anything else is a waste of time. You don't do that for something that's proven itself. Nobody did that for the California starfish. For those of you who are not aware about the political aspect of that, nobody did that for, what's that, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was running for governor in California? Nobody did that for, who was that? There was a porn star who was running for governor. I think Gary Coleman was running for governor that year. A whole bunch of people. I mean, the circus was in full swing that year. A whole bunch of folk were doing that. You didn't hear any political party, any of the Democrats or Republicans sit up here and tell you, see, voting for Gary Coleman was a waste of your vote. You didn't hear that, remember? They didn't blame Gary Coleman for losing the election. Did you get that? I'm telling you, I'm not being funny and I'm not being facetious. The Democrats didn't get up here and get on radio and TV and online talking about how, well, you see, y'all shouldn't have voted for Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman, that was a loser. You notice they didn't do that. The thing speaks for itself. He was a non-factor and a non-issue. When something is a non-factor and a non-issue, by definition, it gets no attention. You can't say that something isn't a factor and isn't an issue, but yet you also aren't ignoring it. If it's not a factor and not an issue, you'd be ignoring it. There's a bunch of other people, politicians, candidates, and issues that you do ignore. But you didn't ignore this. You wanted to make sure you told everybody. You made him more well-known after the election than before. You only do that to something you're afraid of. You only do that to something you're scared of. So their whole mission, their whole strategy is to make us feel like nothing we're doing matters. Nothing's going to change. See, that's how you break people's political will. You break their will by trying to convince them what you're doing isn't having an effect. Nothing's going to change. And what you should do instead is change what you're asking for. Did you get that? You should change what you're asking for. Remember, that's what what's his name? Jimbo Jangles Clyburn was sitting up there saying, "Stop sloganizing. You change what you're asking for. Stop talking about defunding the police. Change to something else. Ask for something else. You need to demand something other than what you're demanding here. Yeah, don't tell us we can't speak up for illegals or whatever. You need to ask for, it's not that we need to support reparations. You need to ask for something else. It's not that we need to rein in the police. You need to ask for something else. Why don't we go ahead and talk about the Green New Deal? Why don't we go ahead and talk about that?
Yes, sir. And to your point, the 1972 Democratic National Convention was 50 years ago. And I just led a study group this evening, and we went through all 10 points of their agenda, the Boston Gay Liberation Front's agenda that they presented. And all of these points are in full swing today in 2022. However, the implementation of them into society didn't happen overnight, but this political lobby, this particular agenda, was very consistent, and people didn't stay off their message, which is why we see what we have today. So I just wanted to underscore that point, and to also let you know that I'm really grateful for you and all the work that you do. For all of us listening, this work, we may not see the results today, but we have to be consistent, because change does not happen overnight. But as long as we're consistent and we're holding a message and we're holding a line, we will create a better society for our children. Thank you for that, and have a blessed night.
Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. And certainly, that's the whole reason why they promote those types of deviants and organizations like that. They would rather have Ed Buck. Let's be very clear. The Democrat Party would rather have Ed Buck, and that's not me being hyperbolic. They've been 10 toes down for him. They would rather have Ed Buck rampaging the countryside. They would rather have that and promote that than anything that benefits Black people, even tangentially. They would rather have that. That's what they're about. They've shown that not through their words, but through their actions. So if you think, no, they wouldn't do that. Oh, hell yeah, they would. Absolutely. They would rather have your school curriculum teaching the children, trying to indoctrinate the children into deviant sexual practices, turn your schools into colleges of whoredom, which they practically are now, by the way. Yeah, they're like, okay, that's fine. As long as we're not focusing on a Black agenda, that's literally how far they're willing to take it. That if and that's why they want to push it on our children. If your kids are talking about deviant sex, drug use, and all these other things, guess what your kids are not talking about? They're not talking about themselves. When you have young Black people who do not see themselves through the lens of America's history of oppression and the global system of white supremacy, when they don't see themselves through that lens, then guess what? They're already beaten. They will mobilize for everything other than themselves. So you got to get them early. You have to cultivate a Simone Sanders early. You can't come pick one of those up. You can't come preaching at her at 20 years old. See, this has been a long time strategy. That's why I showed you all pictures of Simone Sanders as a teenager next to Bill Clinton, which is cringeworthy in retrospect. But you got to start cultivating individuals like that early. You have to start planting those seeds early. See, here we are 20 years later, but they were planting those seeds way back then. They were planting those seeds way back then. And their whole goal is to change the subject by any means necessary. So do not think for a moment that any of this bothers them. They would rather sit up here and have the whole place looking like New York City circa 1970 than to see Black people progress 1 inch. That's the whole goal of it. And since they can't outright annihilate and remove you, well, let's convince them to vote against and work against their own interests. Hell, let's convince them that they don't have an interest. Let's convince them that they don't actually have any interest. Every time they talk about their interests, tell them, nope, wrong, change the subject. Green New Deal, climate change, immigrants, LGBT, illegal aliens, abortion, oh, COVID. Remember, I told you all about that. If you want to know what the strategy was, and a lot of folks didn't like that when I was saying that at the time, because it was in the political year. And they were like, Jason, well, you know, there's a pandemic. This is unprecedented in modern history. It has shut the world down. Surely You understand we got to get Trump out of office. And I said, oh, well, that's not my agenda. What's the agenda? Black empowerment, reparations. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Hand me my cough drops, my Theraflu, my scarf, my hot cocoa, and cut the damn check. I those landing on D Street in Washington, D.C. The agenda is reparations. The agenda is empowerment. I don't care if Megatron and the Decepticons are walking down Amsterdam in New York. Cut the check. There is no other issue. Remember that movie Deep Impact or Armageddon with Deep Impact because the rock actually hit the earth. Yeah. Jason, this big ass asteroid coming is going to hit the earth in 7 days. Ooh, man, that's messed up. You better hurry up and cut the check. We only got 7 days left. If you cut the check right now, I got 5 more days to spend it. I got 5 more days. We got asteroids coming. There's bigger things. Let me tell you, there's no damn bigger thing than that. Because I warned you all, if you allow them to get away with there's a bigger issue strategy, then every time we turn around, they're always going to be telling you there's something bigger than you. There's something else we need to focus on. You will never be the issue. And that's exactly what they've been pushing. Let me get Quasi Black Star. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Quasi Black Star, second time, unmute yourself.
Quasi, are you there? Going once, going twice. You want to move on?
Yeah, let's go ahead. He must have gotten abducted.
Something I was thinking about, they didn't have any heat for like how you said that they came really hard for Marcel after he didn't get elected. And Marcel's definitely someone who would have gotten thrown in jail for his how he is, right? And then AOC is taking pictures and she's not even handcuffed. And I just think that that's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean,
It
it
looks
was
like Quasi.
like non-arresting, and I get it. It was for attention and stuff. But the real thing is, what they didn't like was that we latched on to an agenda of our own. That's what they didn't like. And now, if you're actually literally putting up candidates for your agenda, just understand that's the next evolutionary step. You're literally putting up candidates for your agenda. Oh, hell no. Every alarm bell known to man is going off in the Democrat Party right now. Every single one. Let me tell you something. If they are not alarmed, then they are guilty of political malfeasance. If they were an attorney, they would be guilty of malpractice. There is no way in the world that you can sit up here and see what we're seeing right now. There's no competent political operative, competent political strategist who looks at this and can't see what's clearly the tidal wave forming in front of them. All of them can see it, which is why they're all saying, hey, stop that. We work for the Democrats. You know, this is always some Democrat paid operative. Over there on Luke's program, is always a couple of paid Democrat operatives telling you, yeah, stop what you're doing. You all don't need to do that. Well, if it's failed and of no effect, you shouldn't have to say anything. If it really is that irrelevant and really is that inconsequential, you shouldn't have to say anything. If we really are that small, then we should be statistically irrelevant. The fact that you are speaking so hard against it over and over and over again is the proof that, yeah, we all know you're running the game. You just want us to believe that. So you can enact the same strategy. Okay, change what you're asking for. Remember that little woman who was on Luke's program? Well, you know, the big issues in Florida, number one issue is housing. Okay, but why is that an issue, ma'am? Number one issue in Florida is housing, not reparations. Why is that an issue? See, that's the trick that they use. What they do is they always describe all the effects of systemic racism and tell you that that's the issue. So you end up dealing with the symptoms, but not the actual problem. And that's the goal, to get you to vote for them so that you can go fight the symptoms and don't actually fight the root cause of it. That's like a crackhead going to the dentist to get their teeth done. Ooh, my teeth keep falling out. Yeah, the problem is you're hitting the pipe. We got to get you off of that. And then your teeth will stop falling out. No, just give me some Novocaine. Let's go. Can I get some bleach? Can I get some teeth whitener? Let me just keep hitting this pipe. No. Let me get Jonathan. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. What's good, Jason? What's good, Eve? Peace to the chat. I just got a quick question for you. I just want to get your thoughts on this. Lately, we've been having conversations about, reparations, of course, but more deeper than that, leaving reparations up to the states versus the government. I do believe, having the states do it is great, like California is doing. But when they introduce that thought process about, if we leave it up to the states, then they can kind of co-opt it kind of like everything else and then kind of leave the government. They'd be able to wash their hands and be free of it. And then you leave it to the state that kind of do like the Roe versus Wade thing. So what are your thoughts on that? I just want to know your thoughts on that because I do believe both. But when they introduced that was a new thought to me.
Well, let me be very, very, very clear. Since day one, I've always been an advocate of reparations across the board. So you all have heard me say that now for years and years, going on a decade. I've been an advocate of reparations across the board because what we have to understand is that you are victimized systemically. It's not just one entity. Then you have, now here's a concept I want you to understand because I talked about this before. You have entities that have become the heirs of these injustices. Just like we are the heirs of the victims of the injustice, you've got entities that have become the heirs of the beneficiaries of the injustices. So when you have something like a Google platform, oh, hell yeah. See, if you're going to talk about reparations in California, we got to start with Silicon Valley. If we're going to talk about reparations in California, we got to talk about Silicon Valley also. An incubator of white supremacist thought and propaganda, but more importantly, it is already well known and well documented that these Silicon Valley startups, including the one we're on right now, they have targeted Black people. They have targeted Black people. They've limited Black people. They've used their might and their connections and their influence to make mega multimillionaires of hand-picked white people. Joe Rogan is just one among many. Call me daddy. We can go down the damn list. PewDiePie. We've been watching this happen over there on YouTube now for a decade, where they're promoting everybody else, and Black folk who build these things, they sit up here and silence and suppress them. Yeah, you owe for that too. Because what you're dealing with is legacy money coming from investment firms that have been around for decades and decades. They're beneficiaries of these things. So when we talk about reparations, we're talking about reparations across the board. I'm a very firm believer in that. So the federal government, oh no, the federal government is only one entity that owes, just one. The state governments, corporations, schools, yep. There's a number of them. When you talk about some of these Ivy League schools and their endowments, yeah, you can go ahead and pony that on up. So glad you did well in the stock market. Got to bring you your invoice. I don't just tell you what you paid, I tell you what you owe. So when we talk about this thing about reparations, let me be very, very clear. I have always used the phrase reparations across the board. Do not be deceived into believing that the federal government is the only defendant in this matter. Don't be deceived into that. The state governments, in a lot of cases, local governments, let me go ahead and tell you something here. When you're dealing with the antebellum South and whatnot, you better start asking yourselves about some of these state governments in places that set up here with your sundown town laws and every damn thing else. The Fugitive Slave Acts, who was enforcing it and at what levels? When you talk about not just having the Fugitive Slave Act, but who was enforcing it and at what levels of government, that goes all the way down to the local level. They don't want you to think of it in these terms. Now, when Jews were going after the Nazis, those were the terms they were thinking of it in. If you want to know what my model is, that's the model that I'm using. Because when they went after people, it wasn't just limited to the national German government. They went after anyone and everyone involved. And you know what? That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Anyone who benefited from this is now liable with interest.
No doubt. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. Let me get Michael Caesar. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
B1. I just want to say I agree with everything that I'm hearing here. But my experience and my observation of our government goes all the way back to when I in the 70s when I was used to catch the congressional report on the radio. Andy Young was Secretary of State, and he made one little boo-boo. We won't go into the particulars of it, but I mean, they sounded like a lynch mob. Now, fast forward to here recently, we have the initials BO. That's a political fiasco called a bad odor. And that's what we got. I think this government would rather see anything crash and burn before they let a black man have anything but an apolitical point of view. And I'll
You
stop
know
there.
what? And you know what? That suits me fine too. And as a matter of fact, let me tell you one thing, that suits me just damn fine. I've been saying this for over a decade, going on 2 decades, but over a decade online. If we cannot all be equally comfortable, then damn it, we can all be equally uncomfortable. But this idea that black folk are going to sit up here and be on the hot seat and doing without, and everybody else is just going to be riding around sitting pretty, oh, hell no. If you refuse to raise all of us to the same level, then we can bring us all down to the same level. We can damn sure do that. So I'm perfectly fine with that outcome. What good is there to have in American society if the people who built it are always going to be sitting on the damn outside looking in, and that's going to be just your permanent state of being? No, you can go ahead and if the choice is between justice and scrapping the whole damn thing, if we're not going to get justice, what do white folk tell you? Liberty or death? Okay, liberty or nothing. You know what? I think that's a perfectly fine aspiration. Don't scare me or bother me at all. Thank you very much for checking in with us here. Oh, that doesn't bother me one damn bit. If the choice is between justice and the end, I'll take either or. If I can't get justice, yeah, go ahead and shut it down. Shut it down. Go ahead and shut it down. Yeah, it's done. It's through. Go ahead and let it go. If that's going to be what it is. If that's really going to be the way it is, oh, hell no. You're not going to sit here and tell us, well, you are going to be subjugated and uncomfortable and ignored in perpetuity. This is just going to be the way it's going to be. Yeah, there's a third option. What is that? Turn the whole damn thing off. We can do that too. Yeah, that works for me. Don't know if it'll work for you. I'm talking about the white supremacist establishment. Don't know if it works for you or not. Because let me tell you, every time they go around talking this damn race war crap, that's what I was telling you all. I said a decade ago, they don't really want it. I said it a decade ago, they talk big and they talk big about these things. In reality, you don't really want it. And 2020 showed the whole damn world. After George Floyd got killed, black folk took to the streets. All the white supremacists were claiming, oh, it's going to be like New Orleans, this, that, and the other. Folks was ready this time. If they wanted to get it cracking, it could happen on site anywhere and everywhere. They were on the run anywhere and everywhere across the damn country, truthfully told, across the globe. They had every white supremacist in America had plenty of targets and didn't show up. The best you had was Kyle Rittenhouse. That was the best they had. That was it right there. You could have got it with black folk anytime, anywhere you wanted to. There was a bunch of big talk online, wasn't no movement. Yeah, you talk big about that, but truth be told, you don't really want it. Because if it really just come down to it, and it's like, oh, these the rules now? Oh, that's it, the gloves are off? Well, let's get it going. all of a sudden you get a different reaction. So all that tough talk they do, that's never bothered me. That really, really doesn't. They ain't built like you think they are. They're really not built like that. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that. That's why, let me go ahead and remind you something here. Anybody who's been to prison, anybody who's dealt with folks in prison, you know full well it's not a lot of the strong silent type. It's really not. You got a bunch of people who sit there and they really, really loud and really, really talk about what they gonna do to people. That's the kind of thing you watch for. You watch for somebody who's real loud and talking about what they gonna do to somebody. Every time you turn around, they sitting up there and they're loud and, no man, y'all mess with me, man. I'm gonna do X, Y, Z. Okay. You listen to that. That's a person who's talking big so that they can intimidate folks into not trying to fight them in the first place. They're trying to stop a fight before one can even get started by talking like they really about it and they really want it. So it's like, oh man, every time they come around, they growling and barking and they chomping at the bit, huh? They're checking to see if you want it less than them. That's what it's about. Trying to make sure that you want it less than they do. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really big in all that barking about it. I'm like, let's get with the business. I'm not really big for the barking. So don't sit up here and think that if you tell me, well, Jason, your choices are being ignored or continuing to have an American social order. Nah, there's a third option. There's a third option. Let me go ahead and get Sage. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Brother Black, Sage from Brooklyn, B1. I remember your show got shadow banned because Fat Boy reported it. But my thing was that, and in that show, he said something about us not bringing our agenda frontward to these politicians. Now that we have done that, my question for you is, are we the only people that present an agenda and we're told that no, we're not going to get that? And not only are we told no, they actually have disdain for our agenda. Does that happen to any other ethnic group within America?
Well, no. And the reason for that is because, see, understand, so many of these people, these other folks are immigrants, okay? So they brought their own language. Follow me here. They brought their own language. They brought their cultures from where they are. And by culture, what I mean are common practices and interests. So when you have Jewish people, you can have a Haaretz. When you have Latino people, you can have a Telemundo and Univision. So you've got communication apparatuses that were already built, already serving their interests and already in place. You've got that. Now, for most of you who don't live, for most of the country, y'all got to understand places like New York and California and even Florida, places like that, most of the country doesn't understand how they get down. When you go to places like, New York or Florida, for example, you have a bunch of straight Spanish speaking television stations. I'm talking about broadcast television stations, ABC and NBC affiliates. You got just straight Spanish speaking radio stations, major ones for their market. That tells you that's a communication apparatus of theirs. When you talk about Telemundo and Univision, you're talking about places where they have offices at. So that's a whole different thing in that regard. What I'm saying is their conversations are not hosted by and held by the Democrats. So that was the damn problem with the Essence Festival. You have conversations hosted by and held by the Democrats. First thing they're going to tell you is what they don't want to talk about, which is going to be your issues. So if you allow them to start the discussion, it turns out bad. So the reason why these other groups don't get treated that way is because they have conversations, they host their own, they have their own communication platforms, they have their own gathering places. Because here's the real thing. I mean, you don't really need a newspaper per se in that regard. Twitter is worth multiples more than any newspaper or even, to be totally honest, television network you could name. If you spun off NBC by itself as a singular entity by itself, it wouldn't be worth $40 billion. No one would tell you that the NBC News Network by itself is worth $40 billion. No one would tell you that. I didn't say NBC, but to be totally honest, even if you included NBC in that number, it still wouldn't come up to $40 billion of value. It wouldn't come up to that. None of these entities have that. That's not what they have. So in reality, where we're sitting at here now is far more valuable than their TV networks are, far more valuable than their cable networks are. The ability for people to communicate and start a conversation among themselves, that's powerful. So there's a reason why they created and co-opted the term going viral. Going viral is a code word. I want you all to listen. Going viral is a code word that is used by your corporate media outlets, your so-called mainstream corporate media outlets. That's a term that they use as an excuse for what they highlight and what they don't. So when they talk about going viral, then you're like, okay, well, even if we have supposed to have the same numbers, you notice yours gets ignored. Their whole thing is that, well, our reason and our justification, our excuse for grabbing this post over here and showing it is, oh, this went viral. Well, the stuff we do by that same metric, our stuff goes viral too, but they don't mention that. So these other people have communication platforms and talk amongst themselves. The conversation starts with them. Yes, we are solely singled out by ourselves to be ignored by them. That's the reason why so much of what you do, there's really nothing you could say or nothing you could do that is going to alter how they respond to you, because their political strategy is to ignore you. Thank you very much for giving us a call here. Let me get Mr. Jones. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me, Jason?
Yes, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I just had just a quick query, or just something I've been kind of thinking about. And when you look at white supremacists, where they are, but you think about the Jewish community, and they kind of carved once they got what they needed, they kind of carved their own little niche in the whole game. And white people, to some degree, they bow down to the Jewish people. They don't really like them, but they have to deal with them. And I wonder if is that insecurity still there? If we get what we're supposed to get. They're gonna have to. They gotta like us, but they got to deal with us.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point, though. These other groups don't worry about being liked.
Right.
See, there's where the civil rights generation failed. The civil rights generation is unlike these other groups. They were and still are. Let me say it again. They were and they still to this day are still holding out for white acceptance. They are still waiting for the day that white folk as a group are going to come to them and say, well, Uncle Charlie, we was wrong for that day, and you just likes us. They're still waiting for it.
Yeah, I understand.
As silly and crazy as that sounds, they're still waiting for that. Go to any black church when the white politicians show up. You can see it in Miss Gladys' eyes. She can hop up off the damn pews without her walker. She's showing you, I've been waiting all my lives. So when they talk about religion, they believe that religion means that God is going to get white folk to accept you. If we keep praying to God long enough, we're praying for liberty. No, don't need that. Empowerment. Yeah, don't need that either. Too much trouble. Well, what are we praying for? That white folks see the error of their ways. Oh, okay. No, that's not really an agenda there. So just recognize what you're looking at there. That's the reason you can't get that to happen.
I understand. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for checking in with us here. We appreciate that. This is what I mean by when you're dealing with folks who have agendas that run completely anathema to your own. That's something to keep in mind. When they have an agenda that runs completely anathema to yours, you're sitting there next to some of your kinfolk at your house, and a bunch of you, I know you've dealt with that. You've called me over the years to say that. You're dealing with people who have an agenda completely anathema to yours. You don't define religion as being converting other people to liking you. Jewish people didn't worry about being liked. You know why? The Jewish Holocaust taught them, yeah, being liked is not a priority. Hell, it's not even an achievable goal. Being liked isn't something you can actually achieve. Being protected is something you can. Maybe you can't get people to like you. Maybe you can't get them to genuinely like you. Now, some of you are going to say, wait a minute, Jason, now, wait a minute now. Being liked, I mean, that is something that you can get. Take a look at these celebrities, whatever. Okay, you take a look at a whole bunch of celebrities. Are they genuinely liked? LeBron James gets people to cheer when he comes in the building. He just finished doing a video about how racist as hell the basketball fans are in Boston. Getting people to like you. How do you measure? How do you confirm if someone genuinely, quote unquote, likes you? How do you confirm that? And even if you could confirm, how do you measure it? How do you measure the degree to which they like you? What the hell? I mean, how do you definitively measure it? Not just, I guess, well, I feel, well, this is what they said. No, how can you measure it? See, we can measure the temperature outside. We can measure someone's height. You can measure someone's body temperature. You can measure if someone is infected with an infectious disease. You can measure those things. You can measure someone's income. If someone commits a crime, you can measure the weapon that they used, the amount of force that they used to hit the person with, stab the person with, shoot the person with. You can measure those things. How do you measure someone liking you? How do you do that? I don't know how you measure that. You know what I do know how you can measure? You can measure the degree of protection you have. You can measure that. You can measure how many people are allowed to roam the streets who have expressed negative sentiments towards you. You can measure how many people are out there who are gathering against you. You can measure the degree to which people have degraded and destabilized your lifestyle, your living standard, your income. You can measure that. And we've been measuring it now for over a century. Damn being liked. Jewish people figured that out a long time ago. Yeah, damn being liked. This isn't a popularity contest. This is survival. This is not a popularity contest. It's survival. Let me get Black Ice 06. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, Jason, I'm Black Ice. I'm from Cullen, Louisiana, but I'm hailing out of Houston, and I just wanted to ask this question right here. Okay, speaking of Twitter, Elon Musk, he was talking about he was going to buy Twitter and this and that. And black people, oh, Elon Musk go buy Twitter and all this and all that, right? And then you know what I'm saying. I was watching a clip of Tucker Carlson where he was talking about that. You know what I'm saying. Trump was talking about Elon Musk ain't gonna buy nothing. He talking about he a Republican. What's politics got to do with this? And is Elon Musk gonna buy it? Because seeing to me like Twitter is a risk. It's a risk because black people are prominent on it. And so I would just want to ask that question. See what you say.
Okay. Well, first of all, as the time goes on, Elon Musk's suspected white supremacist behaviors seemingly are becoming more and more apparent. And I have to use the word seemingly. But it's becoming, the things we've always suspected are becoming more and more apparent. Talking about voting Republican and whatnot, it's becoming more and more apparent that the real thing is creeping its way on out. Very, very briefly, because I don't want to get sidetracked. Long story short, Elon Musk sold a bunch of his Twitter stock a few months ago when the price was at its peak. So when it got over $1,200 to $1,300 a share, all of a sudden Elon Musk cashes out billions of dollars worth. I guess he paid off his securitized loans that he was using to buy houses and yachts and things, but he basically cashed out then. Right after that, Tesla stock tanks. So he basically cashed out, and there have been lawsuits filed about this, but he basically cashed out while the stock was at a high, sold out, got the cash money. And now that the stock is at a low and he's no longer got the buying power that he did before, all of a sudden he don't want to buy Twitter anymore. So when the stock was riding high and he could sell it for as much as he wanted, he basically had an ATM, that was okay. Now he doesn't want to do it anymore. So basically that's what was going on there. I never really believed that Elon was going to buy Twitter. I always felt like it was a publicity stunt because of the position that he holds as a CEO and everything. That was just too public to do something like that. I felt like he was doing that. But then again, he's been exercising white privilege to hell. He has broken all kinds of SEC rules and regulations. You know, I mean, the man is practically almost guilty of insider trading, certainly of stock manipulation with the statements that he makes publicly. Remember, 50 Cent almost got in illegal trouble behind some tweets about, oh, is that insider information? Elon Musk has gone well beyond that line. So I never really believed that kind of thing there. However, where does politics come into it? Black folk got to understand something. White folks see politics the way that sports fans see boxing. That's what y'all got to understand. Now, is a boxing match real? I know some of you have your theories and stuff, and some of them are justified about fixed fights. Let's not argue that, though. Is a boxing match ostensibly real? Well, yes. You've seen plenty of boxing matches where folks got knocked smooth, slapped the hell out. So you ask him if the fight was real with his brain damage and CTE and everything else. So, like I say, these are real things. But here's the real point. When Roy Jones Jr. got in there and whatnot, he's got to do his thing. It's got nothing to do with whether he likes you. It's got nothing to do with whether he's cool with you. It's got nothing to do with any of that. He's got a, this is his business. This is what he does. So that's the thing you have to look out for. This is his business and this is what he does. We have to see it that way. We have to understand it that way. That's the way in which they deal with those things. They deal with it from a standpoint of this, these are the rules of the road, and this is how we settle disputes. So when you see two white men in politics arguing or whatever, you know, they'll drag families into it and all this stuff right here, but it's like a boxing match. And when the boxing match is over, then they get back to the business. They separate those things. They don't take any of it personal because they know it's not. For those of you who are old enough, remember when Bill Clinton ran against George W. Bush, 1992. There was hammer and tong and all kinds of allegations and this, that, and the other. And hell, before Clinton even left office, talking about George H.W. Bush was his best friend and this, that, and the other. That should have told you right then. Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell, they've been in the Senate now for decades. If you think those two have, especially with Joe Biden's record, if you think they have a single inch of animosity towards each other, you're out of your mind. That's for public consumption. So for them, it's a boxing match. Elon Musk is a billionaire. You know, he goes back and forth with Jeff Bezos. You know, it's for some stuff that's so outrageously petty. It's a boxing match for them. This is sport for them. Recognize it within that framework. So when you ask about where's the race and politics come into it, it comes into it in that regard.
Hey Jason, ain't that illegal? What Elon Musk did? Did Martha Stewart go to jail for the same thing?
Elon's already done some things that, technically speaking, he could have been prosecuted for. Yes, he's already done that. He already did that before. You know, when he was talking about taking companies private or public or whatever, he's already done that before, because when you make public statements like that, that manipulates the stock price. When you have the CEO of a stock making statements like that, that can manipulate the stock price. So yes, Elon has already crossed that line years ago. You can just start Googling that kind of stuff. And before now, the media was giggling about it. You know why? Because Elon had so much, and this is a lesson for black folk. Elon had so much damn money behind him. The man had a license to print. He had so much damn money. And his customer base was so strong that the corporate media saw it as a futile endeavor to challenge this man. There's a lesson for black folk in that. Now, he wasn't always spouting off his political opinions before now. The most he talked about was weed. But just understand, yeah, he's done a whole bunch of stuff. What he's understood, though, is that he doesn't have to be liked or popular. It certainly helps. But being powerful makes up for that. Being powerful makes up for that. So he's been flagrant with the law and abusing it all over the damn place. And if you don't believe in white privilege, just look at the fact that he hasn't been indicted or anything else Thank you very much for checking in with us here. And there's lessons in that for black folk there. I've been saying this tonight. It's not about being liked. We need to start being a lot more agitating, and we are. We need to be a lot more agitating, and we are. We need to be a lot more visible and vocal, and we are. This is a brand new day of doing things. A whole lot of folks don't like that because the situation is a whole lot more fragile than they let on. See, the whole reason why they've been yelling so loud after Marcel and everything is because the situation is a lot more fragile than they let on. They understand that. They understand that this thing could change at any moment. They get that. They understand that we are far more savvy on the internet than they are. They're talking at the churches. The next generation ain't at the church. The next generation is here. The next generation is here online with us. They're not at the church. They're not at the Kiwanis Club. They're not at the Lions Club. They're not at the fraternity and the sorority, although they're going to continue trying to use those. But that's not where the next generation is. The next generation ain't at Jimbo Jangles Fish Fry. You see, when Biden was running for office and old Bowling Ball Martin was talking about, we don't need the young black folks. We got the old black folks. Okay. You remember old Roland saying that? We don't need the young black folks to vote. Biden gonna win with the old black folks. Okay. Take a look at how that went. Take a look at how those numbers went. The man, they didn't even certify he won the election until damn near a month later. The young black folk ain't at the church kicking it with the old black folk. That's the way it used to be. That business model is dead. The young black folk aren't looking to their grandmamas and grandpappies to figure out what to believe or what to get their facts and information. They're not going to them. They're coming here. And see, that's what scares them. Joy Reid ain't got no pull with the young black folk. Joy Reid, see, what happens is the same geriatric, geritol, metamucil constituency that listens to Tom Joyner and all the rest of these antiques still out there rattling their soup cans on terrestrial radio. Okay, I don't think Tom is on terrestrial radio anymore. So in any case, that audience just goes from one place to another, man. That's all they do. They're like a migrating band of groupies. They go from Tom Joyner to Roland Martin's channel to Joy Reid. If Al Sharpton's saying something, that's all they do. But their numbers are not getting bigger. See, when you see these folks out here talking about black men need to vote, you notice what they're not saying? They're not saying young black people. That when they say they need black men to vote, what they're saying is we need black men, the leaders, the warrior class of black society. We need them to get back in line and start bowing and scraping because the young are following the men. Let me say that again. The young are following the men. This ain't the damn 1970s. This isn't the damn 1970s. Abortion is not a game changer. You're not going to sit up here and win an election on abortion. Sit your ass down somewhere. The young black folk are listening to what the men are having to say, and the men are not speaking at the churches. We're talking somewhere else, and we got a whole different agenda going. And in the short term, you might be able to pretend that you can ignore that for a little while, and it might seem for a little time that it doesn't look like anything's happening. People understand something. Whether you're talking about a fighter, a business, a nation, the time when they put on their biggest game face is right before they lose. The time when they put on their biggest, best game face is when they know they're getting ready to lose. You see, when you're dealing with strategy, if you know you're going to win, or if you feel like the odds are outrageously in your favor, you're going to win, what are you going to do? You're going to start betting more heavily on yourself. You aren't going to bet less on yourself. You're going to start betting more heavily. In a fight, if you know you got the other fighter on the ropes, you have two options. You can try to lure him out. So how do you lure him towards you? Just by appearing to be weak. Oh man, you hold your arms. Remember, Roy Jones Jr. used to be real good about that. Swinging his arms down. Mike Tyson was never good about that. But you had certain boxers over there. Muhammad Ali, rope-a-dope. Muhammad Ali would rope-a-dope. The most famous example ever. When you feel like you got this in the bag, and if your strategy is to lure your opponent out, how do you lure him out? You lure him out by appearing to be overwhelmingly weak, because oh, dude, ain't nothing weak over here. I just need you to believe I am. Well, guess what? It's vice versa. If you are dead on your feet in a fight and you ain't got nothing left in the tank, what is your corner going to tell you? Raise your arms. Keep your arms up. Keep your head protected, and don't move back. At the very least, prevent them from making you walk backwards. Because once you start walking backwards as just a regular method in the fight, once that becomes what you're doing, your opponent knows, I got you. Because psychologically, you keep walking backwards all the time. You're signaling to your opponent, oh, you're dead in the water. The tank is out of gas. When you start dropping your arms and you're walking backwards, it's like, oh, you're out of gas. You're out of gas. So what do they tell you to prevent that from occurring? Keep your hands up. Keep your head down. Don't back up. Put on a brave face right before you get knocked out. Let me get John O'Connor. Go ahead and unmute yourself. John O'Connor, second try. Unmute yourself. John O'Connor, have you been abducted? Okay, he has been abducted. Hopefully they find him. Let me get Freedman Angel. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening, TBA. Thank you for bringing me up to speak. I have a question about, there seems to be an entity that seems to have completely disappeared from any of these conversations, and that's the Black church. Do you see them ever being able to basically revive themselves by getting into the reparations fight, or do you think they're just completely, finished as something that's basically at the forefront of Black society? With that, I'm mute.
Black church is dead politically, and the reason for that is that after the murder of Trayvon Martin, we started getting things done in the streets without the Black church. The moment that we were able to get things changing and take control of the national narrative without the church's input, how are you going to convince me that I need your help when we got things done without you? Hell, as a matter of fact, we got things done specifically by excluding you. So you don't have the leverage anymore to claim you have something to offer. Reverend Haley Barber doesn't have any leverage. That's why the only person he can speak to is Roland Martin. He can't speak to the young Black folk because he can't show us what we depended upon him or needed him for. So at this point, the time for them was back during Rodney King. That was the time for them. The time for them was before now. But they got bought off and co-opted, and the problem is the plan to do that backfired. What they were thinking was the church will be quiet, and the church is what keeps you young niggas in line. If anybody wants to know what the strategy was, it was the plantation mammy strategy. The mammy keeps the kids in line on the plantation. The church will keep Black folk in line. So every time we were getting ready to turn up, every time we were getting ready to take action, the church would tell us, wait now, forgive. Okay, tell the city council, pass me that check. Yeah, y'all forgive now. We ain't gonna do that. You know what would Jesus do? When you need to go home now, get out the streets. And that's what they would do. So the Black church forfeited its ability. I was talking about the letter from Birmingham jail from Dr. King. Dr. King warned about this decades ago. He warned about it decades ago, that if the black church did not actually do black people's bidding, that it was in danger of becoming completely irrelevant to the next generation. Guess what? I'm the next generation. The church is irrelevant. I'm not looking to them for leadership. I'm not looking to them for input. The only thing the black church can do for me at this point is get out the way, because it's had every opportunity to get something done. So will I tell you it's impossible? Well, according to Einstein's theory of special relativity, nothing is really impossible. But I am going to tell you that they've got a hell of an uphill climb ahead of them to ever get back to any sort of influence. The black church is basically starting from zero. Because first of all, you have to convince the current black body politic that you matter. You have to convince them that you matter. Second of all, you have to convince them that you actually know the way, that you work. Well, you can't get that done without some wins under your belt. Otherwise, that doesn't work. You take a look at us over here. We did things differently. We were confrontational. Long before now. Long before now. When you take a look at things like Amber Geiger, I sat up here and I bought billboards all over Dallas, Texas, while the trial was going on. While her trial was going on, her defense attorneys, all the rest of them, they're like, oh, hell. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the old black media don't do. You gonna see this. So the narrative got set right when the trial got started. The narrative got set. We didn't just sit back passively. The narrative got set. And I was sitting there the whole time saying, Amber's going to go to jail and it's not going to be for no 1 or 2 years. Because we set the narrative and we set it early. Derek Chauvin and everything else, we set the narrative and we set it early. The black church wasn't involved. The black church wasn't involved. The few times you have seen them walk out, nothing got done. Specifically where Breonna Taylor is concerned, you've seen a fair amount of clergy out there, and guess what? They've been in the way. Nothing's gotten done. I see a direct correlation between the involvement of the clergy and nothing getting done. I also see a direct correlation between the clergy not being involved and things more often than not happening. Thank you very much for checking in with us here. Let me get Moses 7. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
TBA, thank you for the space and having me on. Look, it's laughable to see black politicians um, doing the extra for policies that have nothing to do with FBA. It's just laughable. But right now, we're so fortunate for TBA, Tariq, and the new black media, the black grassroots, because what we're doing right now, what's going on right now, it's going to set precedent for the value of foundational Black American voters. It's going to set precedent. I always say you gotta bet on FBA voters because this voting block is obviously the voting block that has the most purchasing power, the voting block that's the most sophisticated. Yeah, the underdog, but right now, we are pushing everything, our message into the lexicon. Politicians, the mainstream media, they're forced to talk about it. Look, I tell everyone, man, had this been going on in 2006, we would have been G-check Obama and everyone else to specifically get what we need specifically for FBA. And TBA, we thank you. We thank you for pushing the message. And look what's going on. Another thing, TBA, before I go, I want to say I started listening to you about 3 years ago. 2018, I would say. Prior to that, I was making around 54K. I was in IT, and as soon as I started listening to you, you would have these broadcasts that specifically geared towards uplifting your career in IT and such. Man, I took your advice. Now I'm a project manager. I'm right in the 6 figures, and I'm smooth selling right now, man. And I appreciate you for doing a great job. I land.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that as well, because that's where it comes from there. as I've always said, they hate you because you're black, but they're able to victimize you because you're poor. So when you are in a position of economic powerlessness, that makes you very easy to victimize, which is why when we talk about reparations as the answer, yeah, a whole lot of holes get plugged up when you're no longer financially struggling in that way. You go from talking about things to being able to actually move on it. And so in the process, you're also able to get together with other people because if you're struggling and everybody around you is struggling, nothing's gonna get done. If you're doing okay and everybody around you is doing okay, y'all can get together and stop just doing okay and start doing great. Their whole goal is to convince you that that's not going to happen, that you're okay like you are. Let the minimum wage be what it's going to be. Let the corporations run everything. And then you just get comfortable eating peanuts all the damn time. So
Oh,
thank you
TBA.
very much for checking in with us here. Let me get a DC video. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, good evening, family. Salute to Moses 7. I agree 100% with everything the man said. I'm from Chicago, and I remember one day I was coming up 43rd, and I saw that billboard you put up about Lori Lightfoot, and I agree with that also. These politicians, for some reason, well, we know the reason, but they not gonna put themselves. They ain't gonna put themselves on the line, let alone for our agenda. So yeah, hey, I agree with you 100%. And like my man said, hey, we appreciate the work you put out here and the example that you put out here for our people. And hey, I'll land my plane there. Be one.
Black First Brother, thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. And like I say, if you are the least bit worried or concerned about their abilities here, what they really are going for, Eve just posted up here on the Jumbotron here in the Twitter space. You can see Tiara Mack, what I was talking about here before. These folks get out here and perform, which is what the previous caller here, they were talking about, Moses was talking about. These folks get out here and start performing. When they get in front of white folks and the white constituencies, they start performing. So for those of you who never saw here, yeah, Tiara Mack is a straight up deviant. She's doing what the rest of them wish they could do if they were still young enough to be able to do that. This is who the Democrat Party vets. This is who they investigate. This is who they fact check. This is who they get all the paperwork stacked up on. This is their preferred candidate to bring to us because this is all they're offering. We don't need a Tatiana running for office. If you're not serious, and this isn't serious, we don't need that. So just understand they get individuals who perform, sitting out there in the streets and whatnot, and they're doing political performances. We're not looking for you to perform, we're looking for action. Because you don't bring other people performances, you bring them action. Let me get Sir Funk, go ahead and unmute yourself. Sir Funk, go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, Sir Nose, devoid of funk, is not going to be joining us here. Let me get Hollow Notes. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, what's going on, Jason? How's everybody doing tonight, man?
What's on your mind?
So, I honestly, I just got off of work, so I honestly jumped on the call a little late. First time, long time, as they say. But I don't know if you saw this, man. They just posted, or I just saw it on Twitter not too long ago, where they talked about Kamala Harris and how she is equating this abortion law to slavery. Have you seen that?
Okay, well, there is no abortion law. It's the
What?
Supreme Court,
Oh, you know what I mean.
Supreme
Not
Court
law, but you know what I
ruling.
mean. Sorry, apologies
But
for the word.
no, I don't know. But no, the Supreme Court ruling. I mean, like I say, Kamala Harris at this point, it doesn't hurt her. She knows she's already politically a dead duck. She knows she has about as much chance of getting elected president as your barber does. So at this point now, really, I mean, you're really going to see. My prediction is you're going to see her start talking a little bit more greasy once she gets past the midterms, especially if it looks like Biden isn't going to get elected. So the disrespect and the disdain, I just want you all need to understand she's going to let the real thing start hanging out. This is just a precursor of that. This is just a precursor of saying what she really wants to say, which is, she has nothing in common with us. She has no common cause, no interest, certainly no love for us. And as far as they're concerned, remember I told you all about this, about with Barack Obama, the Barack Obamas and the Kamala Harrises, these immigrant backgrounded people who identify with that. And your proof of it is when it comes to these issues, they are politically black. They see being black as a political affiliation.
Right.
Keep that in mind. See, there's a reason why Kamala Harris, every time she turns around, you see her jumping what she identifies as. But you see which one when she ran for office at the lowest levels, she let you know what she was. I identify as Asian. That's going to be my base. Only when she had national aspirations, all of a sudden she became sister girl Asian.
Right.
But before then, you saw what it was. So they're letting you know the Barack Obamas and the Kamala Harrises, they are black for political purposes. They see that as a political block, just like the issue of abortion, just like the issue of climate change. So black people are, in their world, black people are not a people, they are a political issue.
No, I 100% agree with you. And just to clarify, and I'm sorry I misspoke in saying this a law. I just want to read what the headline said, and this is on CNBC. It says Vice President Kamala Harris compares Supreme Court abortion ruling to slavery, quote, claiming ownership. And I'm just saying, like, exactly what you're saying. Rhetoric like that is fucking disgusting, and we got to stop that shit, dude. So we B1 FBA first. I love everybody. Hey, stay up. I'm gonna land my plane there.
Thank you very much for checking in with us tonight. And definitely, like I said, and these folks don't care about that. I mean, Joe Biden and Barack Obama and the rest of them and stuff, they were against all these things back when they needed to come up. Now in the 21st century, all of a sudden they flipped over and they've become in favor of it. So understand, that's what I mean by these are political issues for them. These are political blocks. And they even see black people and blackness. They see black people's plight as a political issue, not as a race. They don't see us as a race. Kamala Harris does not identify racially as black. She identifies politically as black. So now you all have a proper framework and context with which to understand when she says black and talks about her being black. And when Barack Obama says it, when you wonder how the hell can they keep saying that word black in relation to themselves, and yet they are ignoring our issues. Well, for the same reason with so many other things. They mean it in a political sense, not in a racial sense. So now you understand how those two conflicting behaviors can coexist in their heads. They're black when you say black when convenient, but what you really mean is black for political purposes. When she gets in front of Asians, guess what? I'm Asian. Let me get Black Johnson. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, TBA, how are you doing this evening? This is Black Johnson. I just want to say real quick, man, I really appreciate everything that you're doing, especially with the business channel. And when I see your stuff, I retweet it, I put it out there, and I make people think, really what's going on with the society right now. I think I just real quick, the other day I was speaking with some older gentlemen, and they were talking. I live in Arizona. They were talking about how Hispanics had businesses, this, that, and the other, and how things were going well for them. I just simply said, well, that's by design because they're put here to replace us. And the first thing I saw, they started bucking their eyes and looking at me all crazy, and I thought of you and said, "You can't trust these old niggas."
Yeah, look, I gotta say this. Man, and maybe this is not the night to say it. I don't know. Maybe it ain't. But I gotta say this. Whenever I drive through this, right now is crop season for a lot of farms. And I've made it my business to drive by some of these black owned farms. in some of these states, some of these southern states, Georgia, Kentucky, Carolinas. Made it my job to do that. And I'm going to be honest with you all. I got footage and pictures. I haven't posted them. Then again, I don't think I really need to because the people who live in those places know. Dude, they got illegals all over their land picking stuff. I literally have pictures of black farmers with buses of the illegals out there working in their fields. And I don't know what he thinks he feels like. I don't know what he's thinking he feels like. I don't know if he's thinking to himself that he has stepped into George Washington's boots or whatever. I don't know if that's what they're thinking. But what I'm telling you is I've seen it. I've got it on picture. I haven't posted it. It's not something. That's something. I'm just gonna be totally honest. That's something right there. I cock an eyebrow at seeing something like that because I'm thinking to myself, you know, what's the motive here? Do you think you're gonna get that guy to? If that guy is in support of illegals and we can't just figure out why he is, I'm like, wow, that explains a lot, doesn't it? And if he's got kids and grandkids on the farm and whatnot, that sure would explain a lot, wouldn't it? You got to watch these old niggas. Thank you very much for checking in with us here. Let me get Insane Optimist. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, Jason. Thanks for hosting the space, man. Great point you're hitting on, man. And I'm just at the point with these politicians that I'm considering them the enemy because of their lack of inaction, their lack of willing to utilize the tools at their disposal for everyone else but us. All of these photo ops we see of Ilhan Omar or Maxine Waters, cameras don't just show up. You know that. Maxine decides she's going to say something. She says to her aide, hey, call your people down at CNN or MSNBC. Let them know I'm going to be this place. They're just inactive. They're not using the media like that for us. I don't know when. Has there been a press conference about the lack of movement on qualified immunity or the George Floyd policing bill? There hasn't been no such thing. And what they're supposed to do is adopt a stance in the media that allows them to look the president in the eye. We've seen Boehner do it with Obama. We've seen Mitch McConnell do it with Biden. When it's something they really want, they go to that media and they look the president of the United States in the eye. That's what that does. And they remind him of what the voters did, put him in office and what they're supposed to do and how they might react if nothing gets done. They're not doing that. So they're traitors and they're enemies. That's my take on it. What do you think?
Like I say, certainly they're going to dance to masses tune in that regard. Because here's the real thing for us to understand: these aren't even people we picked. That was the real takeaway of Barack Obama. Beware of political candidates that you didn't pick. Beware of people who didn't come from the soil. Nobody on the block knows them. They were just kind of plucked out of nowhere and just showed up. And there they are, usually with some white handlers standing behind them to say, hey, take a look. So there's your first clue right there. And they started the process of cultivating the turnover, a new group of them. So now they want to sit up here and become, Twitter activists or whatever in conjunction with what they're doing. But the first thing you're looking for is who's serving your interests and where they come from. And if you take a look at it, you'll notice there's a common connection. You didn't bring them. You didn't know them. You didn't go to school with them. They don't come from the soil. They kind of just showed up from nowhere. Hello, my name's Corey Bush. You know I'm black because I used to be on welfare in Section 8. Okay, well, anybody know this woman? No, but don't worry. Somebody gave me $1 million here and I want to run for office. Oh, really? So what we have to do is become a whole lot more skeptical about these things. And anybody who didn't come from the soil and didn't come from the roots, that's not what you support. Period. End of discussion. Thank you very much for checking in with us here. Let me get Damon Harris. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
How you doing, Jason? This is Damon Harris from Waldorf, Maryland, Charles County. I got a question. These black farmers, how are they supposed to compete if they don't do what the white farmers are doing? And if there's black municipalities that could support them by buying their products for, school lunches or something like that, I don't know how these black farmers are going to be able to stay in business if they're getting shunned at every turn here. And I'll land.
Well, slow down. How does that address my point that I made?
Because they got a lot of illegals working for them?
Yes, sir. How does that address the point I made?
I'm just asking, how are they supposed to compete
Right.
with white?
Right, but how does that refute the point I made though? You say, well, how are they supposed to compete with white folk? That's really not the issue. The issue is with that type of motive, whose interest do you think they're going to be standing up for?
I got you.
That's my point. My point is you have one farmer. If you've ever been to these places, you got one farmer and 100 illegals out there. Let me say this one more time. You got one farmer on one farm and 100 illegals. And I've been to places here where I'm letting y'all know they got flop houses. They got not even flop houses anymore. Now they got houses that they own. And I'm talking about they got the kids and the grandkids there. Dude, I saw birthday balloons
out there in Western North Carolina.
Well, there, Georgia, Kentucky, I wish I could tell you it was just one place. If it was just one place, I could relegate it and limit it to that. If it were just one place, I can't do that. I would just tell you, man, I saw something weird somewhere. I cannot just limit it to one place. I can't. I gotta tell the whole truth. If this was just one place, I could say that. So what I'm saying is, and these are always older folks. Now, and my issue is not about the plight of the black farmer. My point is, under those, no matter what the circumstances might be, is this a situation where this is going to promote black people's interests? Because I'm just saying, if the idea is going to be, well, I got to compete with the white farmers, okay, and the method you're using it is going to leave nothing for your children. Let me say that again. The method that they are using is going to leave nothing for their children.
I'll tell you what, in PG County, when we got the MGM out here at the National Harbor, they made it so that you had to hire young black people in PG County to work at those casinos, to work at all those areas down there. So there ain't no way the hiring center is in PG County, just 2 miles away from the casino, and you have to hire from there. That's something the black farmer should have thought about.
Well, there's no way in the hell you got 50% unemployment among black teens and you don't have a workforce for that. What they really want is the ability to pay nothing or next to nothing for it. And that doesn't serve. So what I am saying is, even if all those things were true and equal, the problem with it is you're not leaving anything for your children. You're not doing that. When you got one farmer and he's employing 100 illegals and they've done brought their kids and grandkids up here with them, I'm like, dude, how do you think this story ends?
Right.
Can I speak, brother?
Thank you very much for giving us a call here. Khalid?
Yes, sir.
If you haven't been given permission to speak, sir, the answer is no, you don't.
All right, well, brother, you let me. You said I could. Mic was on. Then when I asked to speak, you tell me no. So that's why I asked, sir.
Okay. He is very, very anxious to talk. Why don't we give him a moment here to calm down? He's very excited. Woo, Jason, I'll get to talk. Jason, can I talk? Can I talk? Okay, slow down, brother. You ain't heard nobody else do that tonight. But I'm really eager. I want to talk. Okay. Let's give him a minute here. Just Eve, what do you want to say?
A couple callers back, they were talking about ending qualified immunity. And for 2 years, we've been trying to get some billboards that say, we want to end qualified immunity. But they say that it's too political. And every time we try to put our message out, something about our lineage or what we're owed, we get pushback saying it's political. And I don't know that other lineages have the same issue. Like, can Jews put a billboard out, or can the Mexicans put a billboard out, or do the Italians have the same issue when they're trying to put their message out? And I don't think they do. But not only do they deny the message, but then if they have to say yes, then they put an extra fee on it and say because it's a political message, it costs more. And I just think we're, dealing with all these uphill battles trying to make sure that our message is out there, and people should really consider that, because that's why we need everybody doing something and not getting arrested for stupid stuff.
Well, definitely for me, one of the things, and I've done this for a long time now. And one of the things that I've done in particular is I call out specific people. I try to stay away from issues necessarily. I call out specific people. So whether it was Keisha Bottoms in Atlanta, I called her out specifically. Now she's out of office. Um, Andrew Cuomo in New York, I called him out specifically. Now he's out of office. Called out Lori Lightfoot. We'll see if old Thunderbird is still in office here in a little bit. I gotta tell you right now, it's not looking very good for Juice and Gin. So with that being the case, like I say, definitely these other groups don't have to do this. So the real thing is they don't have to do this. They're not struggling for empowerment. They're trying to get more empowerment. They're already in an advantageous position, and they're trying to improve their advantageous position. We're trying to get a solidified position. Forget advantageous. We're just trying to get one. So these other groups don't have to do that because they already got theirs. I mean, I had to point this out here years ago. And like I say, if people don't monitor these things enough, they don't know about it. Because I travel the nation, I try to keep up with things that happen in certain places, and there are certain things that I look for in particular. And in Los Angeles, when you have the damn sheriff of Los Angeles saying that he is not going to enforce the law to impound the cars of illegals who don't have insurance because it would be a hardship, that's the very definition of racial targeting. Well, how the illegals who aren't even supposed to be here, not only are you not going to enforce the immigration laws, you're not going to enforce the state laws on insurance, and the state allowed him to stay as a sheriff. So the illegals have more rights and more protections, not just rights, protections than black people do in the state of California. If you black, your car can get impounded. If you're not even a citizen, you can get a pass. Come on now. Come on now. And didn't see Kamala Harris say nothing about that either, by the way. Now, for black mothers, she got a fist in the face for you, but for the police, nothing. Now, Khalid, if you've calmed down, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, sir, brother. I wasn't never upset.
What is on your mind?
What's on my mind, I would like to elaborate on a few things that you spoke on so far as the black farmers issue. I'm a child from the 60s. I'm also a member of the Nation of Islam under the leadership of Honorable Louis Farrakhan. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad told us years ago to produce our own land, our own schools, own hospitals. The sellouts try to say it was hatred. Look at the consequences today. Now you're still talking about the same issues that our grandfathers been talking about. And then we don't even know how to communicate with one another. We like to be rude without the proper education. So therefore, your come off was wrong, brother, from the get-go. No one is upset or whatever your mind is telling you. I just want to ask a question and make a statement. So now I want to know, since this message has been out years ago, why is it still being repeated today? And why do black folks want to get inside a white political party that has no efforts to help them do anything? Don't you think it's time that we do something for ourselves? So, with that being said, you can elaborate on that.
Okay. You said a whole lot there. I mean, what exactly is the part you want me to elaborate on?
All right, well, what part did you not understand, sir? You're not dumb. You're sitting here talking like you're so educated, then I give you a question to answer, and you're going to play dumb. Typical Negro response when you can't answer a question.
Okay, I was trying to find
Your
something that was.
ignorance
I
is
was trying to
showing,
find
brother.
something that was more on your IQ level.
Your
I was trying to
ignorance is
find
showing, brother.
that.
Your
That was the
ignorance is
best I
showing,
could do
brother.
on short notice.
Your
That's the
ignorance is
best I could
showing,
do.
brother. Your
Okay.
ignorance is showing, brother. You can't answer with a common sense
Okay,
response.
Khalid, I will
All
answer.
right,
I will
so
answer your. I will
what is
answer
your
your
show
question,
for?
sir.
What is your show for?
Okay, Khalid, you are very triggered now. I know you
Listen,
are.
man, play
You are
with your children,
regressing
not me.
to your. You're regressing to your
Play
childhood. You
with your
were
children, not me,
abused.
brother.
You were abused. You were very, very angry.
You're acting
Calm
like a
down,
child.
sir. Calm down,
Try your psychologically gay.
sir. Calm down.
Try your psychological.
Okay, since he is not gonna mind his manners. Well, we tried to have a discussion with him. He's not going to mind his manners. So Khalid has got to go. He regressed into his childhood. He's having a bad day, y'all. So tried to do this a certain way with him. So it's just I wanted to address his question, but he had a flashback to his adolescence at the daycare. The workers used to spank him a lot. And he's, no, you not. You are not gonna put me in timeout. You ain't gonna do that. Okay, brother, it's not that. Yes, it is. And give me my toy blocks. Okay, Khalid, brother, calm down. I don't need to calm down for nothing. You are expressing ignorance and apathy simultaneously in my face. Khalid, well, can I answer your question? You are showing your immaturity. Sir, I'm trying to host the Twitter space here. Are you certain I shouldn't do that? Yes, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Yes, and you need to take the most honorable chill pill. All right, let me get Joel. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, Mr. Authority. This is Joe from Charlotte. I hope the sound quality is not too bad. But
It's a little hollow, but go ahead.
sorry, I'm on the headset in my truck right now. But I was actually wanting to tag along on that comment you made about the busloads of immigrants. I was actually at a store out in Johns Island, out there towards I think it's Charleston, but on the coast, and I noticed this was the first time I was there during the daytime when the store was open, and I noticed that literally all the workers that were there, all of the people working at the cash register were Latina. They were from the island somewhere in South America. Some of the managers were like Caribbean or whatever. They spoke better English than the other workers. All the managers did. And then there was one white guy. He was over the entire store. Of course, he looked kind of creepy. But and there were also Asian immigrants working in the deli. They could all barely speak English. And as I was leaving, I noticed there was this 25 foot blacked out like Sprinter van parked in the parking lot. I didn't think nothing of it. I thought it was like a tourist group or something. But as I was leaving, the store was closing, and I noticed the van pulled up to the front of the store, and all those Latinas lined up to get on the van. And it's like they were handing the driver some sort of pass or something. They were getting on the van. And then as I was leaving, it just there's only like one road in and out of there, right? So as I was leaving, that I saw the van was actually behind me, and I just so happened to be going the way it was, and it was about 5 miles inland, and it turned into some sort of complex, like an apartment complex or something. So they're literally like busing, immigrants to some of these stores out there on the coast, and I just thought that was interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean, dude, I've seen I'm talking about literal bus loads of them. Whole school buses of them. My people who live out there, you've seen them. So yeah, I mean that's on and popping at this point right here. So let me get this straight. In the same places where black folk are getting pulled over for drugs every day, and yet these people got illegal aliens by the hundreds, if not thousands, and nobody's being written so much as a ticket. Think about that for a few moments. If we were growing weed in an open field and didn't have a permit, how long could we do that before somebody's coming to arrest us? How long could we do that? And yet they got illegal aliens out there every single month and every single year doing this, and nobody's getting marched away in handcuffs. Recognize game when you're seeing that. I'm not giving you some hypothetical. This is real. This is actually what's happening right here. When we talk about reparations, this is exactly what the hell I'm referring to. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get your world, our views. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening, Summer Black Authority. Just Eve. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And after listening to Khalid, that made my IQ drop a little bit. Just listening to him, to be honest, I mean, that caller was a perfect example of why our older class somebody need to be removed from the paint when it comes to any serious discussion. And it's been going on for far too long that we have our politicians and our elders and go off and sell their souls or sell out the next generation just for just for their gain, and pretty much just leave us high and dry to figure everything out to figure everything else out. Eventually, we cannot keep starting from scratch and zero, because that's ultimately not attainable. I just want to say that I land my plane there, B1.
Thank you very much for checking in with us here tonight. Well, it's certainly about having power moves, because I'm thinking to myself here, whenever you see Asians, they make sure their workforce is Asian. Even if they have to pay more, they get their supplies from Asians, even if they have to pay more. And they frequently do. So just show me how that's a pathway forward to empowerment. That's the thing I got to look for. That's what I'm going to look for. Are black politicians out here doing performance? A whole bunch of folks seem to like that kind of thing, or at least they think they like that. I don't get a kick, and I'm not amused by people performing. I want to see performance. I don't want to see performing. I want to see results. So this idea right now, I want you to understand they're willing to put themselves in harm's way, or at the very least, even if they're just doing it for publicity, they are willing to sit up here and do this for the publicity of everybody else. How the hell is it you black and your constituency is majority black and you're not doing the same thing? We have to have a paradigm shift in how we do things. That from here on in, it is the black agenda is first and foremost, or anybody's going to win other than you. But it is not that they don't know this and don't understand this. They know what our issues are. They understand what our issues are. They made a decision. Yeah, we ain't doing that. So we need to show them, if you do not put our issue first and foremost, prepare to lose every election from here on in. Now, there's going to be a butt dancing contingent who, you got to understand, getting acceptance and approval from the dominant society means everything. So entering into these abusive relationships is okay by them. They're okay being abused. They don't mind it. It doesn't bother them. It's only for those of us who don't have that mentality that's offensive to us. It was offensive to Harriet Tubman, but even she said, I could have freed many more slaves if I could have convinced them that they were actually slaves. She saw it then. There's a bunch of y'all here. You don't mind the abuse. You're okay with it. You are really, your whole aspiration in life, your greatest aspiration is to get in that damn house with Massa. That's your whole purpose and reason for living and for being, is to get up in there. We ain't trying to get in the house. We trying to get away from this whole damn thing over here. That is a fundamental conflict between two people. When one of them is trying to figure out how to improve their position of servitude and the other one ain't trying to be a servant no damn more. That's a fundamental conflict. And our black political class now is here only for the purposes of giving us the illusion that there's somebody somewhere doing something for us. And what we're saying is that, no, we're going to be a whole lot more engaged. You see, the civil rights generation would hang on to little things like, well, don't worry, the Lord going to provide. And the Lord, if they ain't doing right, the Lord going to deal with them. Okay, if they ain't doing right, Jason Black going to deal with them. If they're not doing right, you going to deal with them. If they're not doing right, all of you listen to me, you're going to deal with them. And when they are showing such heinous disrespect and such now open contempt, that's not a game and that's not a joke. That's real. That's a threat. When they're showing you that they're willing to get in the streets for abortion, something that ain't got a damn, there's nothing constructive for black people in abortion. And yet there they are out there. They're showing you we don't give a flapjack damn about black people. And when your political class behaves in that manner, you're supposed to invoke penalties when they do so. They're not supposed to be able to just sit up here and do that and then go skating through the tulips. It's not supposed to happen that way. And when they show you that they are perfectly willing to get in handcuffs and get arrested and or pretend they're getting arrested, but you're willing to sit out here in the middle of the street in July, by the way, in the middle of the street in the scorching summer, you willing to do that. You're willing to do that. Think about that for a few moments. It's late July. They were in the middle of the damn streets. No such thing as a cold street in July in America in the summertime, especially in Virginia. And yet there they were. They weren't worried about getting burns. They weren't worried about dehydration. Some of these folks here are elderly or qualify as. They weren't worried about that. They're risking their health and every damn thing else to signal to the rest of society where they stand on this. And yet for black folk, we haven't seen a similar gesture at all. Now, what they're counting on is there are enough lackeys who are willing to just accept the status quo. Unfortunately for them, that number is getting smaller and smaller. That number is getting smaller and smaller. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight. I want to thank you all for joining us here on Twitter Space. If you are new here, welcome to my platform here on Twitter.